Vladimir Putin issuing a worrying statement this week as tensions continue to fester between the U.S. and Russia, saying, quote, "In the event of a third world war, there will be no winners, including America." Now, this comes as Russia escalates their military offensive in Ukraine. The president of Belarus, meanwhile, has confirmed that his country received tactical nuclear weapons from Russia. So how concerned should we be, especially as Putin reportedly tells the West to go to hell at the same time? Joining us now with reaction is former U.S. Defense Intelligence Officer and author of Putin's Playbook, Rebekah Koffler. Rebekah, great to see you this morning.
Great to see you all.
What do you make of this, not just saber rattling, but almost taking the saber out of its sheath in terms of Vladimir Putin sending nuclear weapons to Belarus?
Yes, this is a very concerning development. It's strategic messaging by Putin to Washington to back out of Ukraine, to stop arming Ukraine. It is driven by fear of losing this war that he cannot afford, because the outcome of this war is existential for him. Russia considers Ukraine as part of its strategic security perimeter, and it cannot allow NATO to get as close. Just like we wouldn't allow China or Russia or Iran to get as close to Mexico or Canada. So that is why Putin is overreacting.
So, Rebekah, that's incredibly, honestly terrifying. You know, for Vladimir Putin to consider what's happening in Ukraine an existential threat, and for him to begin to talk about the use of nuclear weapons, and to extend your analogy of what if Russia were doing something in Mexico or Cuba, what is the off-ramp? We can put on screen, by the way, the number of nuclear weapons at any hand for given countries. Russia's got the most.
At the top.
Yeah, so what's the off-ramp for him facing an existential threat?
So right now, no one is even talking about off-ramp. Will, in fact, it's quite the opposite. In May, a senior NATO official, Rob Bauer, announced that NATO has switched the alliance to wartime footing. What does it mean? NATO countries are combing through thousands of classified documents, war plans, and looking for guidance on how to beef up their own defenses and how to actually fight the war with Russia. And this is why Putin is overreacting. Putin has always thought, and the Kremlin did, and the general staff, that we are seeking regime change in Russia. Everyone hates Putin. He's an unlikable guy. And that is why he has prepared this terrifying doctrine. He and the general staff, this is similar to our Joint Chiefs, right? They are looking for vulnerabilities in U.S. Communication networks, in U.S. critical infrastructure, in U.S. satellites, and this is why you see these cyber espionage, cyber attack, including on our Department of Energy, that manages our nuclear infrastructure and sets our nuclear policy.
Yeah. That reflects something we saw this week, by the way. Several U.S. federal agencies, as you mentioned, hit by a global cyber attack carried out by Russian-linked groups. But let's finish this conversation with the larger question, which I find unavoidable throughout this conversation, which is, okay, we got a man who considers this entire relationship, this entire war, this entire interaction existential.
Correct.
And if at the end of this story, it's the end of Putin, then he will no doubt use nuclear weapons to remain in existence, to remain in power, to remain alive. The U.S. has to find a way for that not to be the case, because nuclear war cost, as he points out, is a no-win situation even for America.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing to clarify to Americans is that Russia is not targeting U.S. homeland with nuclear weapons, right? The doctrine was developed for Putin to authorize a nuclear strike on the battlefield in Ukraine. The problem is with this thinking is this: as wargaming shows, and as you said, I'm a former DIA intelligence officer, and we conducted dozens of war games simulating a U.S.-Russia conflict, right? And so once the first tactical, even if it's tactical, nuke gets popped on the battlefield, everybody is going to overreact, because all of these states that own nuclear weapons have missile warning systems tracking that stuff.
Yeah, and then the dominoes begin to fall.
Exactly. You just nailed it. Spins out of control. Every war game has shown
It's hard not
this.
to feel like the dominoes have already begun to fall, Rebecca.
Exactly, and we need to pay attention. And President Biden needs to sit down and negotiate. And instead, what happened 2 years ago, he handed to Putin a list of 16 critical infrastructure targets. You can't make this up. This was such a foolish move. And the Russians developed a strategic operation to defeat critical infrastructure of the adversary, targeting U.S. homeland, because they believe if they can't use nukes, they can use cyber against the U.S. They consider it a non-nuclear without nuclear mushroom.
Important and ominous conversation this morning. Rebekah Koffler, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.